Hello and welcome to another weekly webinar hosted by Shopkeep Arty, the online platform helping everyone to learn new things, improve their art and have fun creating. I'm John, and today we're flying virtually to the other side of the world to join professional watercolourist Iris Babao-Uy live from the Philippines. Interestingly, Iris started life as a piano major student prior to developing a passion for watercolour and soft pastels. She now regularly teaches floral and still life painting and has participated in several group exhibits for watercolour in Asia, as well as soft pastel shows in the Philippines. So let me press our grandly named travelometer and let's zoom over to Iris and say hello. So let me do this over here. Here we go, down to the Philippines. Wow, look at all that urban sprawl, I guess you'd call it. Here we go. Hello, Iris.
Hello. Hi, John.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. That was amazing, what you just did now.
That's good. And we've just flown down to Manila, the capital of the Philippines, and as people say, the Pearl of the Orient. I couldn't help but notice a lot of buildings. I think it was named the world's most densely populated city, with something like, is it about 30 million people you've got or something?
We're quite a busy country here.
Does it feel busy on a day-to-day thing when you're out and about?
Well, now because of the pandemic, the streets are pretty much quiet. But on a regular day, yes, traffic can be a problem. Getting from one place to another can be a problem. Yes, but yeah, we still love it here.
Oh my goodness. I guess that's why it's so good to get into art, the peacefulness of art in the yes, in the heart of Manila. I'm really looking forward to today. It's going to be a fantastic session. So I'll let you get ready while I finish my short introduction. These free weekly paint-along Zoom webinars are designed to improve your art and give you a boost of creative inspiration from leading artists around the world. An amazing opportunity to join them live and experience different multicultural influences. Around halfway, we'll pause and I'll ask Iris about her 2 to 3 hour workshop webinar event, an exclusive paid-for event that's coming up very soon. So without further ado, let's get painting and go back to Iris. So Iris, what are we going to be doing today?
Okay, we'll be doing loose florals. Of course, you only have about 4 to 5 minutes to do this. So it's going to be very loose, an impressionist style. So I have a sample here. Basically, this is what we'll be doing. I'll be teaching you how to do the wet on wet, how to do the washes. We'll probably focus on maybe a couple of flowers, but I'll see if I can finish the whole thing in 45 minutes, why not? And I will also show everybody how to start the sketch, because I know that a lot of people um, take that as a challenge. It's a challenge to most people, starting the sketch. Some really try to go as detailed as possible, and honestly, you don't need that when you're doing watercolor painting in this style, because it's your brush strokes that actually matter. So if you have too much detail in the line drawing, that sort of makes it too tight, and we don't want it very tight. We want it loose and dreamy. So it's really more of an atmosphere that we're after.
Okay, great. So hopefully people, I did post the sketch up on our website Shopkeep Arty. So if you've seen that you can use that to help you sketch it out. But as Iris said, she's going to kind of take you through a little bit at the start now. So let me show your board, and maybe you can start going through that now, Iris.
So, all right, so this is our photo reference. Now, normally it's very difficult to find the perfect photo reference. Even in nature, when you go out, it's difficult to find the perfect floral arrangement. So you really have to rearrange it, tweak it a bit. And it's part of what I'm going to show you now. So here in the photo reference, you can see that the light is coming from the left side. And this will be our focal point. So it's going to be this flower. Again, please don't be intimidated with the shape and all of these details, because that really doesn't matter. what we want to show. We want to tell a story, yes, but the details really come in later on. What you want is to have an atmosphere and a mood going for you. And the placement of the objects is very important. So yes, I'm going to retain this object here. This one I'm going to move a little bit and make it a bit smaller because I want the focus to be here on this flower. I'll be removing that. I will still use this, move it up a bit, and then add some twigs, leaves later on. So I'll just show you the first thing that I do. This is a 1/4 sheet of paper. It's about 11 by 15, okay? And the first thing that I do is I mark out where I want the objects to be. So just very lightly sketch the shape first. Again, it doesn't have to be very detailed. Just, pencil, doing the sketch actually is sort of a warm-up for you. It helps you understand the subject better, and it helps you see if the placement will work for you or not. So again, don't commit to a very detailed line drawing, because if you want to move one object and you committed so much time doing all those details, you might not want to do that because you got so tired with all of those details. So now I'm happy that I have the focal point here and I have another flower here. So you see I've raised that a bit higher and I made it smaller. And then I have another sort of a bud here and added a few little twigs and leaves there and maybe a few buds there. So the first thing that I do, so since I have that circle already, the first thing that I have to look for is where the center of the flower will be. So the center is where it receives the least amount of light. So looking at the photograph, you can see that this is the center, and this is what I'm going to mark, okay? So I always start, well, this is what works for me, but again, it might not work for everyone, but this is how I do it. I start with the center, so I mark that. So I'm taking that negative shape, and then I'm already shading that. So I don't get lost later on. So I know that this is the darkest part of the flower. Okay, and then from inside out, I'm going to start putting on those petals. And I just think of it as curls, just curved objects. If you get too lost in all of those details, you just might want to give up. You just might want to not paint it anymore because it will look too tiring for you already. So again, just impressions. You just want to have a feel and a flow of that. So what I try to do is I try to look for parts of the flower that really sort of come up to me. Okay, so those are the ones that receive the most light. So in this part, this is going to receive a lot of light. So I'm just gonna lightly mark that, just so that later on I know that I'm gonna stay away from this and I'm going to preserve the white of that paper. And I also have another curl here, which you can see. Again, I'm just gonna mark that so that, I know that, okay, I'm gonna keep that white and I want the white of the paper to sparkle. I rarely use opaque white. In some detailed paintings, I do use masking fluid. Okay, so again, so that I don't get lost, this is the darkest part. And then the edges, you don't have to worry about the edges because we will be doing negative painting later on. So it's the paint from the background that's going to be showing the shape of these outer petals. Okay, so this is the most important part. Moving on, locating again the center. So it's this one. So I'm marking that dark spot there. And then working from inside, going out, I'm just again lightly sketching those shapes. So I'm just looking for the curves where the two petals or where the petals meet, where it intersects, areas of shadow like this one. So I'm just going to mark that already. I'm using a 6B, by the way. So it's a soft pencil, dark enough for you to see, but it dissolves in water, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so again, some of these petals here. Now the second flower will be much less detailed than this one, and also much darker.
Now, Iris, would you be able to hold that up a little bit because people are struggling to see the pencil marks really because it's a bit. Or we
You
could,
want to hold.
yeah.
What do I hold?
Well, or we could lower the camera down a little bit. I don't
Oh,
know. Or
okay,
you
sure.
could press a bit harder. it's,
Oh
it's
yeah, because my marking is too light. There you go.
yeah.
Okay.
I think what we'll do is we'll move it back up when we come to the painting. I think that'll be good.
The reason why I do it light because the graphite will get in the way with your paint, and it might create muddy colors. So just be careful with it. Okay. The important thing is just you're just building a roadmap, so nothing really detailed. Okay, nothing detailed. Just want sort of a guide. Okay, and then it's also my way of warming up. I consider it my way of warming up. Then I'm just gonna put a few leaves here. Now for the detailed drawing, John put that up earlier on, so you could refer to that. When I took a photo of it, I tried to tweak the contrast, so I made it darker. So it looks dark in the drawing, but in actual, it's really not dark. Okay. Then from here, I'm just gonna be adding some twigs here and there, maybe a random flower here. Okay. So this is what we have. Okay, and we will see how this goes. Now, as you start your painting, so you have your sketch ready, as you start your painting, you have to decide from the very beginning, where is your focal point? Where is the light coming from? Where will the shadows be? What mood do you want? Do you want it daylight? Do you want it an afternoon picture? So what we're going to be doing now is a morning portrait of flowers. So the first thing that I do is oh, by the way, I have to say that I really stretch my paper. For those who will be joining the class, I can show you how I stretch my paper. Probably send you some guidelines or an instruction on how to do it. But I fully stretch my paper because I work with a lot of paper, so with a lot of water. So now that I have the sketch down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the paper. Okay. So I'm using a flat brush. This is an imitation squirrel brush, so it loads up with a lot of water. So I'm adding a lot of moisture to the paper, but I'm staying away from the areas which I want to be kept white. So this is one way for you to preserve your whites. Because you notice the tips of the petals of the flower are white. It's the tips that are translucent. So it receives a lot of light and it's transparent. So you want to show that in your painting. And then these ones, because these will be blurred, I'm okay with having moisture in that area. I'm also adding some moisture to the center or to the areas where the two flowers will meet. And then here on the leaves. And then this one, because again, this will be fading in the background, I'm also fine with loading that with the water. Okay. But just to make sure that I have enough, I'm going to go for a second coat of water on this area. Because you want that really watery so that the paint will run and we will blend the pigments on the paper, not on the palette. So quickly, I'll just show you three colors. So my style of painting, as I normally start with the background. So I have a yellow paint here. This is actually just a cadmium yellow, okay? And then I mixed it with yellow ochre, okay? So it's not too bright. And then I have that same yellow and I just added a bit of sap green. So you have a yellowish green. And then you have another one, which is a bit of a blue, manganese blue with teal and a neutral tint. So violet, gray, something like that you have. Okay, so just get those ready on your palette so that once you start on the background, you don't lose time going back and forth from your palette to your bucket of water and mixing your paint because you don't want the paper to dry. Right? So I have that now. So I'm going to start on the left side because this is where the light comes from. So of course, if you want light, then naturally you would use warm colors. I don't memorize already, or sometimes I don't. I go from palette to palette, so I'm really not very conscious with what color I use. So what's really important is the temperature. Is it warm? Is it cool? Is it transparent? Is it opaque? So those are the things that are important. So when you're doing your washes, you want to use transparent paint. Stay away from your opaque pigments at this point. Okay, notice that because the paper is wet, the moment you drop the pigment, it just blends and flows and moves, and you don't have any hard edges. So that's what you want to avoid. So I'm just going to continue with this left side as well, so that you have a balance of that color, that yellow. And then I'm going to come in with another brush, another flat brush, clean flat brush, loaded with water. And that's what I'm going to use to soften edges if there's any hard edges that are starting to form. Okay, so you can see here, there's a hard edge that's starting to form there. So I just wipe that with the brush and get rid of that hard edge. Okay, I also like to splatter every now and then, because this adds a nice texture and it also sort of improves the flow. Okay.
I think
Now,
somebody was looking at the paint list at the start, Yale, and
uh,
and they've said, how can you replace quinacridone burnt sienna?
burnt sienna. Well, quinacridone paints are very bright. Um, Normally, what I can also use raw umber or burnt umber, and then I just mix a bit of orange with that, maybe a pyrrole orange to brighten it up a bit, and sometimes a bit of red Indian as well. So it depends on how reddish yellowish you want. So it's up to you. It's your preference. So if
Yeah.
you want it more reddish, which is how the quinacridone burnt sienna looks, then you can probably add a bit of alizarin crimson to it, to your brown, and a bit of yellow or a bit of orange. So yeah,
Okay.
I do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So done with the first yellow, I'm now going to add a bit of green. Now the bits where you think you will be having your leaves later on is where I add that wash of green. Why? So that it will represent leaves in the background. Okay, because you want to have layers in your painting. You don't want to have just a foreground. You want to have a foreground, a midground, and a background. Okay, so these colors here will represent the ones that are at the back. The reason also why I like to do this is when you have a white sheet of paper in front of you, it can be very intimidating. I remember when I was starting, I painted with 4x6 sheets, and it was already too difficult for me. So what more if you were to paint on a full sheet? So the thing with watercolor is that you're faced with a white sheet of paper, and then how do you remove that fear of that white paper? You deduct, you remove that white. So you start by doing the background, and for me that actually works. It gives me a feel of how the painting will go. It establishes the mood for me, and it already shows me where the shapes will be. Okay. Now, at this stage, you grab a tissue, and if there are areas where you need to keep white, you just lift that with tissue. So all of these has to be done while the paint is wet. All right. Now, so I'm done with the bright colors. I'm done with my light. I'm going to bring in a bit of the shadow. So when you say shadow, just think cool colors. Okay. So I'm going to add a bit of blue, manganese blue maybe, or if you have teal or turquoise. Okay, so just a light shade of blue. Here as well. Again, if it's starting to form hard edges, just wipe that with flat brush. It shouldn't be too wet that it will cause your paper to be runny. Okay, just enough moisture to soften those edges. Okay, and then I'm going to come in with a neutral tint, or I normally, if you looked at the color palette, I mentioned Shadow Violet of Daniel Smith. I like using that color because it granulates and it separates into 3 different colors. So it's a nice pigment that I like to use for my shadows. So Shadow Violet. So I'm going to use Shadow Violet now. If you don't have this, you can use your neutral tints and maybe just add a bit of violet there and blues, dark blues. Okay, so I'm going to add that here. So again, the light is coming from here, so the shadow will be in this area. So that's another thing that you have to look out for when you're doing your painting, or also when you're looking for your reference photos. You try to look for the light. Try to look for the light source, and you establish that early on in the painting. I'm not going to add my darkest darks yet. That will be for later on. But this is a good way for me just to get the mood going and for me to see if I'm happy with the composition and all. Okay, now this is important. If there are areas here in this, the flowers, well, because we preserve the lights here, if there are areas that are starting to become hard edged, work from the inside. So this is a flat brush loaded with water. Work from the inside and let this edge here touch that hard edge. Okay, so just allowing that bit of fabric, that bit of hair to touch those areas that are hard edged, and immediately you can soften that. Okay, without adding paint to your paper. Okay, you can do that while still keeping your paper, your focal point white. Okay, so making sure these areas are kept free of paint. Okay, at this point now, so this is my background. At this point, I need to use a heat gun to dry this. So excuse me for just a few minutes, a minute or so. I hope you can still hear me through the noise of the heat gun. Can I still be heard? A bit.
I would focus on the hair drying first and then maybe have a chat after, because it's cutting out the hair dryer noise, but it might cut out your voice as well. Now that's an unusual hair dryer. That was great. We've had a few interesting hair dryers over the weeks. David Bellamy had one shaped like a duck.
I can't hear you, John. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm talking to everyone else, really.
All right. So I use the heat gun, okay, for two things. One, because if you just leave it to dry, well, sometimes I do that, but just get ready for little surprises of edges that are forming. So some hard edges that are forming. So when I use the heat gun, I eliminate that. Okay. And another thing is I use the heat gun because I dry the paper, the background, before I proceed with the focal point and everything else. Is because watercolor dries much lighter. Okay. So when it's wet, it's very dark, it's very vibrant. And then you start working on your focal points. And then when the background dries, you see that, oops, it's not balanced at all. So the background dries so much lighter that your focal point is much darker. So to eliminate that, I really dry the background first so that I know exactly what I am going to be working with.
Okay.
So when you do washes, that's the very first thing that I really try to look out for. Okay, so now that I have this, we're going to start working with this one. When you're starting any painting at all, in any subject at all, well, for me, when it comes to watercolor, we start with the lightest going to the darkest. So you go from light to dark, and then you start from soft edges to dark to hard edges. So the hard edges usually come in later on in the stage of the painting when you're doing the details. So what you saw me just do right now is I just lightly moisten this part of the flower with a sable brush, with a synthetic sable brush. Okay, not a squirrel brush, because this one holds less water than the other one. So again, the timing, the amount of water is very important in the way I approach painting. And then looking at your reference photo, you don't see any yellows here at all, but you don't have to limit yourself to what you see in the photo. You know, you can always tweak that. So the next thing that I look for is what would be the next color lightest next to white, because white is your whitest. Okay, so what would be the next one? So imagine that you're painting the shadows. You're not painting the highlights. You're leaving the highlights as is, but you need to start painting the shadows now. So the next color that is next to white, the lightest color next to white for me would be a bright yellow. So that's what I'll be painting now, not the tips, not the highlights, but think always painting the shadows. So I'm just trying to establish where the shadows fall. Okay, so that would be in this area. So this is the tip of the petal, and then you see that crease there. So this is where the shadows will be. So that's what I will be painting. I'm trying to keep away from those whites, from those edges there of white. Okay, and then of course, because as I said, at this stage, I don't want any, I really try very hard not to have any hard edges. I have another brush, okay, loaded with water, and this is what I use to soften the edges, okay? So you have control, because if the paper is too wet, at the moment the paintbrush hits the paper, the paint dissolves. Yeah, you don't have any hard edges, but you also won't have any more control over the shape of the petals that you're painting. So this is an easier way for me. And again, don't try to tie yourself down with a reference photo. That's just a guide. It's just to show you a feel and a structure. It's like a map, but don't be too tied down to it, especially when you're doing loose floral painting. Okay, so you can see, I don't know if you can, but I hope you can. Okay, so you can see that I've still maintained the whites there. And then I'm going to use the same yellow, but I'm going to add a bit of alizarin crimson to it. Okay, just a bit. So it's going to be a peachy orange. Okay. And then the consistency will still be watery, but not too much, okay? So that you still have control, so that it doesn't go everywhere. So again, still painting the shadows, still painting the folds where the light doesn't hit the petals, and keeping those highlights free from paint. Now, if you make a mistake, this is I mentioned this in the list. This is a melamine sponge. This is one of my go-to tools when I need to lift, okay? So let's say this one. Let's say I feel I added a bit too much paint there. Just come in and lift that, and easy. Okay? It's easy to lift paint with a melamine sponge. All right? So after that, still the same thing. The same one, the same yellow, but adding a bit more alizarin crimson this time. And a bit of that quinacridone burnt sienna, so it's more of a maroon, close to a maroon. And then I'm going to establish a bit of that darker tone there. Okay. So as the light hits here, so the darker petals, or the petals that receives less light, will be found in this area. Okay, so you can see that I'm saturating this area more and keeping this area light. Okay, then just run that through with the wet brush. I'm not even concerned with the shapes anymore. Okay, just want to have a nice flow of that. Now, while I'm letting this dry, because again, timing is very important when you lay down the pigment. If you lay it down too soon, it spreads. If you lay it down too late, then it's a hard edge. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to work on this one. Now, this flower will receive much less detail than this one, and it also receives much less light. Even in the photo reference, you can see that this is darker. I'm looking at the clock.
Yes, no, we are sort of around the halfway mark. So I don't know whether now's a good time to stop, or do you want to just do this little flower here?
Yeah, maybe I can do this and a bit of that one.
Yeah, and then we can let it dry while we have the little half-time break.
Okay, so just to show you, earlier on, because this one was a lighter flower, remember I used yellow as my lightest next to my white. For this one, I'm using already the second pigment, the yellow with the orange. So it's not going to be as light as that one. And then I'm also protecting less whites, if you notice. If you see here, I have a lot of whites that's preserved. In this one, I don't. Because, again, you want to push this one further in the back. So next pigment, the color mixing, we will go into that in detail when we do the class. Can't do that now. We don't have time for that right now. But I will be explaining to you how I mix my colors and how I shift from warm to cool. Okay. So this is very wet, very loose. No details for this one. Okay. Then quickly, before we go to that break, okay, I'm just going to wet this area again, the edge of the flower. And I'm going to show you how, before we do that, let me start. See, because timing is very important. While that is drying up a bit, I'm adding a bit of that dark tone there. Because as you do it in layers, you get different values as the paper dries. Okay, so I have to do that now. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint the edge, and I'll show you how that will make the edges pop, or the petals. That will show you how we sort of etch out the petals by painting in the background. All right, so using the tip of the brush, you can use the side and the tip to help you with the shape. So you can see, as we do that, you're etching out the shape of that petal. And then what I try to do is I vary the tones here and there. So it's not all flat green. Okay, so maybe I can add a bluish green here. So it's important to alternate cool, warm, cool, warm. Okay, so you want to have that type of variety in your painting. Then with the brush again. Just help to spread that. So you notice I'm intentionally allowing some edges to remain sharp, and I'm intentionally blurring some edges. So even in the edges, you have variety. You don't have an entire area that's just all hard edged and all soft edges.
Now would now be a good time to go to break, do you think? When it's an artist's first time to do an arty class, they always get a little bit carried away. No, it's looking stunning, Iris. It's looking really. And how are you doing at home? It's really taking shape, isn't it? If you're watching on YouTube, we'd really appreciate you pressing the thumbs up button. It ensures that YouTube then recommends this class to more people and helps us spread the benefits of mindfulness and creativity. So thank you if you wouldn't mind doing that. In addition to our free 45-minute arty classes on Tuesdays like this one, we also host special 1-hour arty events on Thursdays, for which we charge a small fee to join live, or you attend for free if you're one of our patrons. This Thursday, for example, we're travelling from England to Ireland, or Northern Ireland, to Florida, to California, and joining 4 amazing professional artists to ask them to share their sketchbooks with us. A really unique insight into what inspires them and how they record their memories and moments. So I'd really recommend that you join us, because it will be a really fascinating event. Putting these RT classes to one side though, the secret sauce of what we provide is our full 2 to 3 hour workshop webinars. These events have restricted numbers, making them more exclusive and immersive. You also get to speak directly to the artist for guidance as you paint, which means you pick up a lot more of their tips and tricks. The price to attend this workshop with Iris is just £33, or it's about $45 equivalent, which works out at about £11 or $15 an hour. So really fantastic value. The workshop webinar will be taking place next Tuesday, the 23rd of February, and again it will be starting at 9 AM UK time in the morning, so the same time as this class started. So Iris, what are you intending on doing for the workshop next week?
Oh, You want me to show the
Oh
paint?
yeah, that'd be great. Have you got one to hand?
Um, all right, it will be similar to. Do I hold it up
Oh
here?
yeah, if you just put it, yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Okay, so it's going to be something like this. Okay, but not really this, but it's going to be a still life. So it's florals set on a table. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a bit more challenging because you have to work with perspective and all. So it will be glass. We'll have to work on the details of that.
Yeah,
And then
glass and perspective is quite a fatal mix.
yeah, but it's doable. Believe me, it's doable. So yeah, it's going to be something like this. And then I have a few reference photos I have in mind already. So normally I pick elements from something like this, and then I have another one with a pretty vase like here, and then some lace and some twigs. So it's basically that. So I'm
Wow.
going to be showing everybody how to start from a focal point and then working from inside going out. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. And those flower arrangements are fantastic, but probably in Manila, they're just sort of like common weeds growing on the pavement. Is that right?
No, no.
No, I'm only joking. I'm only joking. Um, no, it sounds absolutely lovely, and I think it'll be a combination of a lot of different elements. So you'll learn tons, and Iris is a really great teacher, as you can tell already. So you head over to our website, shopkeeparty.com. You click on Arty classes and upcoming events. Then if you scroll down a little bit, and you'll see next week you've got Iris's workshop just there. You click on the workshop button, and you can then scroll down and see all the details, a bit like Iris has been talking about here with the references and also the materials list just there. And then if you are interested, oh, by the way, we've got 10% off Jackson's art there, which you might want to take advantage of. If you are interested, you click on that link and it goes over to Iris's shop. And you can see there we've got the live webinar ticket and also the video as well. And on the video, you can buy the full video, or if you've attended the workshop, you get a big discount. So hopefully that helps you. And then once we've launched the video, you can then go to our video library, and if you've purchased that, you can then find it on here, and it will always be here, and then just click watch. So as long as we've unlocked it for you because you've purchased it, you can then obviously watch the video from there. So that's how it works. Right, let's head back now and join Iris for the second half. So Iris, now I've seen you in the corner of my eye tinkering.
I
Right.
think we at the time. It's 5:40. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So let's go back. Well, right. What's next then?
All right. So
It's
basically,
starting to come on.
you saw how we did the flower here. So it's just the same technique, and I did transfer that technique here, and then just using darker colors here and blurring the backgrounds. So now I'm going to be doing a bit of the flowers here at the edge, and this will always come in handy. Okay, so a water bottle mister would always come in handy. It gives your paint texture, and it also re-moistens the paper that is dried out. So when you're doing the background, you want it to, of course, be softer. You want the colors to be much more subdued, not as vibrant as the ones in your foreground or even in your midground. So the key is always to work with a moist paper. Okay. Now, when I do my backgrounds, I like to use a Chinese brush. I'm sure a lot of you have this in your stash. The thing with this is that the hair is stiffer, and it's sort of it can do beautiful washes as well as beautiful dry brush strokes. So this one really comes in handy. And then you can flatten it in a way that it can work as a flat brush. So you can see that edge there. See? So it can work as a flat brush, and it can also work as a round brush. So very versatile. So, okay, so we're gonna do the background flowers. When you do the background flowers, again, don't be concerned with the shape. Don't be concerned with don't want hard edges, definitely. So what you're gonna be looking out for is what color should you use to make it move backwards? Okay, so anything that comes forward would be your warm colors. Warm colors, high contrast, vibrant tones make your objects come forward. So now your challenge is, how do you make it go backwards? Okay, so when you want something to go to the back, when you want it to go backwards, then you would want to use cooler colors. So that would be your violets, your blue pinks, okay, so your grays. Even the leaves should use cool colors. So stay away from your bright greens. All right. So the first that I'm going to do is I'm going to paint again the shadow. So I'm going to use the base. I'm going to paint the base of the buds here, and then you'll be surprised that it only takes a few brush strokes to do that. You don't need much. Okay, then leave it. Do not overwork an area. Again, give the paper time to recover from the moisture and all those things that you've been doing with it, and then move on to another area of the painting, and then go back to that later on once the paper has dried a bit, so that the absorption time of the pigment will be different from the first layer that you did. Otherwise, you'll just be doing the same thing over and over again, and you'll just be messing this up, and then later on you just realize, oh, you don't have any more white areas left. You've covered up everything. Okay, so once I have that, I'm going to try to establish okay, it's called the receptacle. I actually just Googled that right now. The base of the flower, where it meets the stem, is called the receptacle. I'm not a botanical painter, so I really did not, Okay, so that's what I'm doing now. So I'm just establishing that very wet, loose strokes, okay? So all of the hard, detailed, dry brush strokes will come later on. And then when you do your stems, don't do it doesn't have to be complete. You can have some broken lines there to make it look more natural. Because again, wherever the lights hit an object, it becomes lighter, right? So if you have something that looks too hard, just soften that with the brush. Okay. So now you can see that this one is starting to take shape. So I've given it a bit of time to rest. So it's a bit drier now. The paper's a bit drier now. So I'm just going to add a bit more here. Again, painting the shadow. Okay. So these are just random, like, buds. It's going to be appearing there. Soften that edge. Okay, now I'll be doing this. Now the thing that I like about that flower is this bud here that curls upwards like that. I find that part very pretty. And then I'm going to come in. Just soften up that edge. Okay. So when you look at it, I'm looking at it at the screen. It's nice to step away from your painting every now and then, because if you look at it too close, you feel that it's lacking something. It doesn't have too much detail. But then again, when you look at it with fresh eyes, you see that, oh yeah, it does represent that shape already, and actually that's enough. Okay. So it's wise to really try to figure out where you need the details and where you don't need it. When I was starting to paint, I would end up erasing a lot of details. So I'd paint it, I'd spend so much time painting it, and I realized I don't think that should be too detailed, and then I just end up blurring some areas. Okay, so don't do that. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is, I can see that I have a lot of light here, and we don't want that. You want that area to start to become not really darker, but it has to move backward. So I'm going to add some cool colors there. And that also gives me the opportunity to etch out the shape of this petal. So you notice I'm alternating warm colors with cool colors. Always warm, cool, warm, cool. And I don't stick to just one tone of green. I also mix my greens. This again. Going into a bit of violet while that's wet. Going back to the flower. The paper is a bit dry now, so it's taking in the pigment differently. And at this point, you start to add your darks, your darkest darks. So you look for areas in your painting that will benefit from that dark. For example, you want this to shine, you want this petal to shine, then you paint the back side of that with something darker, and that will make it glow, see? So that white against that dark will make that petal glow. If it's too hard edge for you, then just swipe that with a wet brush. Okay, now we're going to be doing, I'll be done in maybe 5-10 minutes. Okay.
Brilliant, so, brilliant timing.
I hope everybody, well, if you're painting along with me, please don't feel rushed. I don't normally do it this way. Don made me do it this way.
Yeah, that's it. Just blame me. Just blame me.
So it's not normally done this way.
Sometimes it's good to do a bit of speed painting.
Speed painting the natural way.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so now finishing. The paper has dried in this area, which is good because now you can add your dry brush strokes here. And then I might want to add a bit of background flowers there. Now, because I'm in the light area where the sun is supposed to be, then if this is pink, the background flowers are pink, I cannot use pink here. Okay, I'm going to be using still the ones that are in the orange or yellow tones. Okay, so just adding a bit of random shapes here and there. So still warm colors. Even for the shadows of the petals, I'm still using warm colors. Cooling that a bit with a bit of ultramarine pink. So this is like a violetish pink. Okay. And then establishing the greens again. Okay, now I need to dry this again a bit. And for the final touches, because again, as I said, you want to preserve your dry brush strokes when you're towards the end of the painting. So just look for areas that need a little bit more detail. So that would be the center of the flower here. And then I think I also need to establish a bit more where the stems are going. So because the paper is dry, I have more control with that. And the pigment also goes a bit darker. And I'm just using the tip of the brush for that. There, and I think that's done.
Wow, that's amazing. And well done for fitting it all into that 45-minute slot, Iris. That was really good. No, thank you so much. And how did you get on? We've been getting some great comments. If you want me to pass on some comments to Iris in a few minutes, then now's your chance to just write that down either on the live chat or on the Q&A if you're watching on the webinar. And I'll pass that on to her at the end. So both Iris and I would love to see what you've come up with. I've created a post relating to this arty class on Facebook where you can share a photo of your painting. Simply search for Shopkeep Arty on Facebook, or if you are watching on YouTube, there's a link in the description and you can go straight through to the post. Then just post your painting up there. And we can all have a look. Do like other people's work if you like it. It's a really great community we've got on our Facebook page, and make comments about things. Most importantly, you might even get a comment from Iris herself, who I'm sure be willing to review them. You almost like a little mini critique. So it's fantastic. Yes, she's nodding. I had to check before I offered that out. Now, I've mentioned our patrons a few times. Being a patron is not only the best way to save money on workshop webinars or purchasing video tutorials, but the monthly contribution you make also helps to support our channel and keep these free classes going throughout the year. This week, I've got some new patrons to welcome into our exclusive Arty community. So let me press the other button. I've got the travelometer, but I've also got the button of thanks behind me as well. So I'll now just press that. Oh, didn't work. Oh, there we go. Brilliant. So we're saying thank you to Annette Whittler, Ruth Moulton, Kathy Musa, John Kahn, Doris Murray, Jean, and Kathleen Potter. So thank you so much, everyone, for your support. We really appreciate it. Before I go, some comments. I'll go back to Iris and I'll read some of the comments that we've been having. So brilliant demo from Vinay. I really enjoyed it. I'll try this in the next day or so. Susan Gate, beautiful painting and an excellent demonstration. Lala, an excellent demonstration, one of the best I've followed. Thank you so much, Iris and John. Debbie Rowley, wow, love this demonstration. Watched it while doing my ironing. Iris is a great teacher and I'm really looking forward to her workshop. Louise, makes it look so easy. I just enjoyed watching. Deborah, thought I wouldn't paint flowers. You have made it possible. Thank you. Jacqueline Grover, thank you, Iris. That is beautiful. You made it look so simple. Can't wait to have a go. Trina, just lovely, Iris. Thank you. Sue, lovely painting and such helpful information, Iris. Thank you so much. Sally, lovely and informative class. Thank you. Christine, thank you so much. Great class, Iris. Janice, beautiful painting. I've just realised there's quite a few. I'm speeding up on my thing. Carol, brilliant class. Thank you so much. I'll now go and try it. Molly, wonderful class, Iris. Thank you. Norma, wow, beautiful speed painting. Lovely demo. Can't imagine the outcome on longer, slower workshop. Thank you so much to both of you. Vivian, please show finished pick again. Don't worry, Viv, we will. Vivian, sorry, I took liberties there that I could abbreviate your name to Viv. I don't know whether I can. Linda, it was a great session. Enjoyed it so much. Nina, thank you. Some great tips, but it went so fast, couldn't keep up. Should try and watch again later to do it. Yes, exactly. Well, we will have this on YouTube, and also, obviously, the workshop. We'll be able to do things a lot slower, and Iris will be able to talk us through everything in a lot more detail. Hazel, brilliant. Thanks, Iris. Can we see the final pick again? Don't worry. Janet, lovely work, Iris. Aileen. In fact, actually, maybe you can move the camera down so that it's a bit closer to the picture. So by the time I come to you, because these comments are going on for a long time. Johanna, Iris is amazing. Susie, just gorgeous. Sue, fantastic. Learned so much. Beth, awesome. Iris. Aileen, thank you, Miss Iris. God bless from Lovey May Jula in the Philippines. Lovi Ma Jola. I've probably pronounced that terribly, but that's somebody in the Philippines, I think, that was on the channel. Great lesson from Artie Clarkey. Beautiful flowers, thanks. We also had a comment from one of our long-standing professional artists, Jane Bettridge, who said really enjoyed this and looking forward to next week's workshop. So there we go. You got a fan with Jane as well. So let me now just show the painting. There we go. That looks a bit better. We can get a bit more of a close-up. That's fantastic. So obviously the end, I'll come back to that right at the end. Thank you for joining us, and please do, if you get the opportunity of joining us for the sketchbook special this Thursday, you will not be disappointed. We're joining Jane Bettridge, we're going to Graham Booth in Northern Ireland, Vlad Yeliseyev in Florida, and Keiko Tanabe in California. So that's going to be a really fantastic hour of seeing their sketchbooks and talking about what they see as important. So it's goodbye from me, and obviously thank you so much for your time and generosity to Iris. Thank you, Iris.
Thank you very much.
Big round of applause. Thank you. And I'll finish on the painting.